Okay, well, so as you know, tonight's session is about unlocking scholarships. We're going to talk about all the different types of scholarships and then hone in maybe a little bit more on the process about how you as a parent can work with your student. And if there's students on here, hopefully they can take away a lot of the information here and get started. Okay, so let me introduce everybody who we have tonight. I already mentioned myself, Debbie Schwartz, but we also have Allie Danziger, who is a senior vice president and general manager of a division of Ascent called Ascent Up, a professional training platform that delivers career readiness, academic success, budgeting tools, and resources to help students succeed in college and their careers. She has over 15 years of experience leading, mentoring, and recruiting entry-level professionals and is passionate about eliminating the skill gap from higher education to employment. Allie, I don't know if you want to add a little bit more and tell people about your background and how you got involved and what you're doing today.
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, everyone, and share some best practices around applying for scholarships and really just making the most out of your academic career from a smart financial place, because this can be a really overwhelming time for so many. And just excited to share our wisdom between myself, Will, and Debbie. So thanks for inviting us to join. I guess a little bit of my background. I have been an entrepreneur and an executive for the last 15 or so years, and my most passion comes from training and upskilling early career professionals. And I've always found that regardless of where you come from academically, it's all about that grit and growth mentality that helps people thrive in both the workplace as well as their academic career. So I'm always about finding different ways to educate yourself, build the confidence and skills that you need in order to thrive. And we do that at Ascent Up by providing the wraparound support training and support and confidence that our borrowers need in order to really get the skills to set them up for long-term success and really durable economic mobility. So again, excited to be here. Happy to answer any questions as we're going through the chat, and you'll hear from me again soon.
Great. Well, glad to have you here. And we also have Will Geiger, who is the co-founder and CEO of Scholarships 360. And Scholarship 360, and Will tell you a little bit more, is a platform that helps millions of students make decisions about higher education each year. Will has experience in college admissions and financial aid. He was the former senior admissions director at Kenyon College, where he personally reviewed 10,000 admissions applications. That's a lot, Will, and essays. You might get some questions about essays tonight, but and you also managed Kenyon College's Merit Scholarship Program and served on Financial Aid Appeals Committee. So a lot of great experience that relates to tonight's topic and a lot of other topics that families are dealing with. Can you tell us a little bit more, Will, about how you got involved with building a scholarship platform?
Yeah, so I'm also a first-generation college student, and that sort of was the inspiration to starting Scholarships 360. Paying for college can be complicated. There's a lot of different ways you can pay for college. We'll get to a lot of that in this workshop. And my goal with Scholarships 360 was to try to help make this simple for students and just to help students find good information, find trusted, vetted scholarships. I've had a lot of experience in this space on the college admissions side. I also spent a number of years as a school counselor helping students and parents navigate big decisions around college admissions and financial aid. Love talking about all of this. So I'm excited to share more. You can find me at scholarships360.org. It's again, free resource. We have lots of great tools, a scholarship matcher. We also offer a number of scholarships that students can apply to directly through the platform as well. And if you have any other questions afterwards, I'm always happy to talk to students, and you can just email me at will@scholarships360.org. But yeah, excited to share more during this workshop tonight.
Great. Okay, I think I wanted to just remind people, most people probably got a link to this scholarship, but if by chance you didn't apply, this is a scholarship that we have connected to tonight's event. You can use the QR code and we'll be selecting a winner on Friday and sending out the announcement. So hopefully you can just quickly use your phone, get the link, and do a quick sign up before the end of tonight.
Actually, just by being here, they've been registered already. So good job. First step.
So as a quick overview of what we're going to talk about tonight related to scholarships, we're going to talk about why it is important to explore and apply for scholarships. We'll discuss the different types of scholarships that are out there, how to navigate the application process, and when and where, most importantly, that you can help your student find scholarships.
So I can jump into just some important stats around the importance of scholarships. You can read it here, but 61% of families use scholarships to pay for college in 2022 and 2023. There are so many scholarship opportunities available out there. We'll dive into the different types of scholarships, how to find the right ones for you, but I see some comments in the chat of questions of people feeling overwhelmed by the number of opportunities, and is it even worth it if I'm not National Merit Scholar? You know, are there still opportunities for me? And there are. So hopefully this overall webinar will be encouraging to you that there are opportunities available. One thing that I really want to highlight is what's happening with FAFSA. So as you may or may not know and be aware of, FAFSA issues lately have really caused a delay in over 200,000 forms, and errors submitted are at about 20% right now. So only 33% of high school seniors have even filled out the FAFSA at this point, which there's all types of projections around what's going to happen because of this. So we really want to make sure that everyone feels confident. Again, as I shared in my intro, our goal at Ascent is to help students plan, pay, and succeed in and after school. Because of all the FAFSA issues, it doesn't mean that this is helpless. It doesn't mean that there aren't other opportunities there to pay for your education, and scholarships can be a great way to do that. So there are no essay scholarships out there. There's niche ones specifically for you and who you are and who your student is. So just really make sure that you're not feeling helpless or hopeless with all of the issues that are happening with FAFSA right now. And with that, I will pass it over to Will to talk about all the different types of scholarships that exist today.
Yeah, thanks, Allie. So just, I wanted to run you all through some of the major different categories of scholarships. I know that scholarships can mean, slightly different things depending on the context. So I just want to be pretty broad in the definition and run through some specific examples in each of these 4 buckets. So we're talking about federal and state government scholarships. This will be scholarships, grants such as the Pell Grant that would be awarded through FAFSA. It could also be something like in Florida, the Bright Futures program that is for Florida residents to use at in-state colleges and universities. But these are dollars that are awarded at the federal and state level. Scholarships from colleges, these can sort of have a few different flavors. One can be merit scholarships. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with college merit scholarships. These are awarded by colleges, and they can be based off of academics. They can be based off of specific talents, but they're specifically awarded by colleges for some sort of talent or achievement. Colleges will also award some need-based financial aid. This can also be sort of derived from the FAFSA. Some colleges will require other forms like the CSS profile, but that's going to be based off of your demonstrated need. And then for all of the students who are in college, there's also going to be departmental scholarships that may be awarded to students who are studying in specific academic areas. And subsets of this can be study abroad scholarships to help students even pursue summer research or summer internships. So these can also be really great opportunities just to pay for some of these additional academic experiences that may happen outside of the traditional school year. Next big bucket are scholarships from nonprofits. This can range from the Girl Scouts. This can include like Elks Club, National Merit Scholarships, even just local nonprofits in your community that offer specific scholarships to support, I think oftentimes high school seniors who are going to be going to college the following year. And then finally, a lot of private companies also offer scholarships. Again, this can range. Some large companies offer scholarships. At Scholarships 360, we've partnered with Skechers, for instance, and they're offering about $100,000 in scholarships for seniors right now. There's also small businesses in your community that might offer scholarships. So this can really range from some of those really big corporations to small companies, law firms, dental offices in your community that, again, are trying to support local high school seniors, most often who are going to college.
So Will, there's a question, and I'm wondering maybe of the categories that you've shown here, can you identify which of these tend to offer scholarships to maybe US citizens and or international students?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some nonprofits, private organizations that are going to, and colleges as well, that are going to offer scholarships to sort of broad array of folks, ranging from US citizens, permanent residents, students who might be DACA students. Some of them will be for international students. I would say that does tend to be a little bit less common. On Scholarships 360, we do have a specific resource page for scholarships for international students. And then on the federal and state side, most of that aid is going to be for US citizens, permanent residents, and then students who are residents of specific states. So definitely not, it's not impossible to find scholarships as an international students, but it definitely can be a little bit more challenging. When I worked in college admissions, we, definitely, it was just, we had, I think, a lot of students applying from outside of the US, and we just had sort of a limited financial aid budget for those students. And I think that will be fairly common at like many colleges. So, definitely don't mean that to be discouraging. I just think you have to be, pretty specific with your search.
And one last quick question, just because you mentioned that you were a first generation college student. Somebody is asking, is a student considered first generation if their parent got a degree outside the US?
Yeah, so, and this is something that is always like a little bit in flux, and there are different definitions of first gen. I know that like one definition, I believe the Department of Education sort of clarified last year was students whose parents did not attend or receive degrees from 2- or 4-year colleges. That will sort of vary from college to college. I would say sort of the sort of general for the past few years definition of that was a student whose parents had not graduated from a 4-year college. When I was in college, when I applied to college, my mom had a 2-year degree, and that had counted. So it will vary a little bit from college to college, scholarship to scholarship, and how they define that. I would say typically if your parent received a 4-year like bachelor's degree or equivalent, even outside of the US, that would not be considered first generation college student. that context still, I think, is important, and then does, it is great to know as far as just understanding your experience as a student, and sort of your family. But for some first generation scholarships, that sort of might be outside of their definition. So I'm sorry, it's a very long-winded way of saying there are like a few exceptions for this, and sort of always good to check with the specific definition that the scholarship provider the college is using. But great question. So, keep them coming. So I definitely have seen in the chat some students, and some parents commenting just that, I think specifically on number 2 of these misconceptions about scholarships, that scholarships are so competitive, don't bother applying, and sort of expressing some of the, I think, misconceptions about scholarships. So I'll kind of run through each of these and try to debunk them a bit. So the first one, only top achievers and athletes get scholarships. Certainly that awesome if you are a high achiever academically, an athlete who might be competitive for a Division I or a Division II scholarship, awesome. But there definitely are a lot of other opportunities out there for students. Some scholarships are really just driven based off of demonstrated financial needs. So these tend to be a lot of the need-based college scholarships and a lot of the grants that governments are offering. And then there's scholarships that they're open to students who just show a passion for the actual like scholarship competition or the scholarship application. So this might be a video scholarship. This might be an essay scholarship where it's more assessing your creativity, your perspective, your experiences. For a lot of local scholarships, they're really aimed at supporting students in your local community. My co-founder, who's actually my brother, he got a scholarship through my dad's labor union. My dad was a Teamster. My brother is very smart. He went to Princeton, and he often liked to joke that he was probably the only student at Princeton that was on the Jimmy Hoffa scholarship. I'll get to sort of strategy as far as your scholarship search, but there's definitely scholarships that will have a sort of achievement merit component to them, but we'll be considering a lot of other factors. I think misconception number 2, scholarships are just so competitive, don't bother applying. I think that this really gets at like the types of scholarships that you're applying for. Again, we'll get to the strategy a bit, but my general advice is to really try to find the scholarships that are really aligned with your background, your experiences, and your interests. Just because there's going to be less competition for those scholarships. And if there's one thing that I want you to take away from that is to sort of think, okay, where can I find scholarships where I'm going to be like a really great fit for what the scholarship committee is going to be looking for, and there's just less competition. Just because less competition, I love it. It means you have a better chance of winning and earning the scholarship. Number 3, you start researching scholarships your senior year of high school. Definitely a lot of scholarships will be open senior year of high school, but I think on one end, there are opportunities that are open to freshmen, sophomores, juniors, even younger students in middle school. And then there also are scholarships that are open to college students and graduate students. And I think a lot of times college students forget that there's some great opportunities, including those departmental scholarships that I mentioned earlier, that again, I think are just going to be a little bit less competitive because they are for specific students at your specific school who are studying a specific major. And then the last question, you have to be a great essay writer to win a scholarship. I think on one hand, you should definitely invest time and thought into writing, a really strong essay. But I think it's more about your story and more about sort of putting your personality into the essay. Like, 100 times out of 100, I would rather read an essay that was just interesting to me than an essay that was just like was technically like perfect essay. I still remember when I was at Kenyon, my favorite essay was from a girl who lived outside of Lexington, Kentucky. Sadly, she did not go to Kenyon, but she was admitted with a great scholarship, and she just wrote her essay about her drive home from school. And you just got a really great like insight into her sense of humor, into like what she saw in her town. And in that essay, I felt like I was sitting next to her in her car as she drove home for school. So it definitely wasn't necessarily like the most perfect essay that was ever written. But it was just an interesting story. I felt like I got a sense of who she was. So be yourself. Definitely get like a trusted second reader to read your essay, proofread it. One of my favorite tricks is to read your essay out loud. I think that's a really great way to sort of find anything that's clunky in your essay, and also ensure that it's written in your own voice. So that would be my last debunk of these misconceptions. So I sort of alluded to this in the previous slide, but my sort of process when I worked with students, I probably worked with like 150 students in the high school level at a private school in Connecticut. And my advice was to take out a piece of paper. I know, kind of old school, but write down what makes you unique. And you can break this into categories like, tell me about your background, tell me about your experiences, tell me about your interests, tell me about your goals. So all the different like adjectives that like make up who you are, including like where you live, what your parents might do for a living, what sort of organizations you're a part of. Write down all of those things, and this will sort of give you a list of just attributes and ideas to sort of steer your scholarship search. And the more specific you go, the more niche you can take that search. So right now, for example, on Scholarships 360, we have a scholarship that students can apply to on our platform, and it is specifically for students who are interested in jazz. They're jazz musicians, and they live in Fairfield County, Connecticut. So if you are a senior, this is a $5,000 scholarship. I think, be a very competitive applicant, just because jazz musicians in Fairfield County, Connecticut, who are high school seniors, that's like not a massive pool of students. So that's just an example of an amazing opportunity. Like, it's a $5,000 scholarship. Like, that is, $5,000 to put towards your tuition bill. That can make like a big difference as you're thinking about paying for college. So definitely would recommend for you to go more niche and to find scholarships that are aligned with your background, your experiences, and your interests. So that would be my first step. And I think just something as simple as just jotting all of this down, and then using that as a sort of roadmap for guiding your scholarship search is great. So now we'll get a little bit specific as far as like tools to use and resources, and just like how you can actually connect some of these dots to find the best scholarships for you. So ideally, you have your list of attributes, you have like a bunch of ideas. Definitely my first recommendation is to think local. I know that sounds kind of weird, as I run an online scholarship site, and I think a lot of students like automatically are going to think like, let's go to, a site like Scholarships 360 to sort of guide our scholarship search. I like going local because, again, it's going to be less competition. And these scholarships are designed to support students in your local community. So, talk to your school counselor. If your school uses like SCORE or Naviance or one of these college planning tools, they might have a sort of current list of scholarships that you might be a good fit for. If you belong to, a church, a house of worship, a synagogue, reach out to them. Local PTO, PTA, Elks Club, Lions, Rotary, look, local businesses, look in your local paper. This will take a little bit of hustle and being creative, but there definitely are scholarships that are available, and a lot of the scholarships are like in the process of awarding scholarships like now and in the next few months to come, just because they know that this is when seniors are graduating, and a lot of these local scholarships will be for seniors, to be transparent. But they know that they're graduating, and they know that they're going to be, having a tuition bill to pay in the months to come. So I would definitely just think local, and check out, and really, it's kind of networking. I'm sure Allie could tell you that's also really just good skill to develop as you think about your job and internship search like down the road. So it's a good habit to get into. Number two, online tools. Scholarships 360. We're proud of like what we've built. I think one of the big things that makes us different is that we do hand vet and verify and review every scholarship that's in our system, just to make sure that it's legit, to make sure that these are real organizations offering real dollars for students. There's definitely other good online tools, have good things to say. About Scholarship America is another really big one. I believe that they're the biggest or one of the biggest individual providers of scholarship dollars. They work with a lot of the big foundations. So they would be another one to check out. But there's a lot of online tools. And speaking of online tools, just always have to mention, be careful. There unfortunately are, scams. There are, organizations and folks who are looking to take advantage of students. And I think unfortunately with, some of the issues around FAFSA, they know that students are nervous. And I think some people are preying on that a bit. So my advice with scholarship scams, like, some of the basic things, like obviously you should never have to pay to find scholarships. Scholarship 360 is completely free. There's a lot of free tools. You should never have to do that. You shouldn't have to pay for like, special access. If there's anything,
Sorry, somebody
Yeah.
asked earlier, should they consider hiring a consultant to help them find scholarships?
Yeah, I mean, I think that depends on like your, your sort of situation. I mean, I personally, did my scholarship myself when I, advised students, who are looking for outside scholarships. I would just recommend, going to the resources. It's one of those things that, yeah, you could certainly like have someone sort of help curate scholarships like for you, but that's definitely something that you can do yourself. Again, it's a little bit of work, but you know yourself best, and you're going to be the one that's completing the application. So I generally think it's, advisable for, students to take the lead in that process. So that's just my 2 cents. I don't think there's secret like private scholarships that are out there that are not going to be like discoverable on scholarship, other scholarship like tools. I'm always a bit I think it just depends on your situation, but everything should be out there for free. But yeah, on the topic of scholarship scams, I think anything that's like a guarantee, like that's something to be skeptical of. If you don't see like previous like winners listed anywhere, or like contact details for the organization, that might be something just to like, again, your spidey senses are tingling, like look into that. And then lastly, just if something like gut level looks wrong, like trust that a little bit. Like if there's like typos, or the site just like looks really, really dated, like that's not a deal breaker, but it's just something you want to pay attention to. So we have some resources on Scholarship 360, just if you want to like dig more into that. But just wanted to flag that, just because great thing about the internet is there's a lot of information, but some of it is kind of choose your own adventure, which can lead you down some like paths that maybe you didn't want to go down.
Will, before we move on to the next slide, didn't you share when we were talking before about how you guys vet scholarships?
Yeah, I can get into a little bit of that. So we do have a person on our team who actually like goes into privacy policies, is like, doing a thorough check on every scholarship. And then we also have scholarships that have a little verification badge next to them. And that means that we've actually talked to and had reviewed our scholarship profile by the scholarship provider, just as like an extra layer of assurance. We're also working with organizations like the National Scholarship Providers Association. That's a great organization. Anyone who's like a member of NSPA is, probably a good resource as well. But yeah, the vetting definitely takes, that takes time, but it's just important to us to make sure that we're, going to be a really like trusted source of scholarships, and we can do a lot of that work. So on Scholarships 360, that the scholarships are going to be finding are going to be trustworthy and going to be legitimate awards for students.
Great. Well, I can jump into timeline to start applying. And there's been a lot of questions in the chat about this. And frankly, like the best time to start was yesterday. So next best is today and tomorrow. But you really just want to start as early as possible so that you can make sure to take advantage of every opportunity that's available. As Will shared, best would be to start with that list of what makes me unique, what makes me special, and then plan your research from there. I think it's helpful to also get some outside help of what makes me special, because that might feel, you might miss opportunities. Will mentioned that his brother went to their dad's employer, which is awesome. And so by getting people in the family involved of what are the scholarships available in my local community, or that I may not be thinking about that I could be perfect for, I think can help. And then planning early, then you have time to brainstorm and bring others into the fold there. So focus on those early application periods. Again, like just really planning for what needs to happen before decision day, or before the summer actually kicks off. Most applications do start in March, but that doesn't mean that here we are, May 1st is tomorrow, that you've missed opportunities. Many will come up probably tomorrow, and then leading into the whole summer. And then they're happening all year long too. So it's important to, a lot of times we think about this bullet 3, it's just for incoming freshmen and it's just March through, maybe June. But if you're proactive with it, if you're planning early, there are opportunities year round, and definitely not just for incoming freshmen. So we talk about that all the time at Ascent, that there's so much push on the freshman class, but then you see the applicants really dwindle down for sophomores, juniors, and seniors, when there's really so many opportunities there. You just, maybe you're burnt out, or you didn't get a scholarship, or you did get a scholarship and you think that's all that you can get. But there really are opportunities for those later years of school. So please, please, please keep looking for them and keep applying to them.
Yeah, I've also seen that as students get further along in their college years, and they've really, also narrowed down into what they're going to major in, that actually helps open up more scholarships, because organizations, like to sometimes be specific, and also they like to honestly give scholarships to students that they know are closer to graduation, knowing that they're going to complete their, their 4 years.
And same thing with the local communities too. Like if you know that you're going to be coming back to that local community, and you can show an employment tie to coming back, then I would think that the local communities are then more likely to support the people that are then going to be supporting the economy in the near future. So just some tips and best practices on how to narrow your research. So a lot of it goes back to this, like, who are you, what makes you niche, but using the search filters, using keywords. So even if you're just going in Google, but also throughout the various tools, maximize the keywords that you're using to, just like you would in a Google search, to find the right opportunities specifically for you. In terms of organizing the information, we would do, we recommend like a Google spreadsheet or an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of every single scholarship out there, and then what's needed, the deadlines, put those deadlines on your calendar. If you have someone else in your family that can also help to remind you of those or keep you accountable to those, that's always great as a second check, but not just the deadline. So working backwards from that deadline of what's needed from it, what essays do I need? Do I need to make sure that there's time for someone else to read that essay and give me any feedback, again, so that you're not in this crunch time, but maximizing the opportunity and maximizing your chance to be successful with it because you've planned really far in advance with that. It really is just about keeping yourself organized and using the tools that are at your disposal to ensure that you aren't missing those deadlines, you aren't late on them, and you're constantly checking for new opportunities that are posted on a weekly or monthly basis. Well, I'll hand it back to you.
Perfect. Yeah, and just to echo Allie, giving yourself time will just allow yourself more opportunities just to, really, write great essays, put your all into the application. I know it can be tempting to sort of like scattershot, like just a ton of scholarship applications. Like that's not going to be a super successful process if you're just sort of like copying and pasting essays for the application. The essay readers and the application readers, they know it's, I remember when I was at Kenyon, a student wrote a really lovely supplement about attending, how badly they wanted to attend, our liberal arts college, beautiful campus, and then they forgot to remove Davidson College from the essay. So that was, didn't necessarily, like, we didn't toss their application out for that reason, but it just, gave a bit of pause, just that it, was a little sloppy. So, refrain from that. Also, like ChatGPT, definitely not, that's very obvious when students are using that. I know a lot of, school scholarships will be using tools that will sort of help them suss out which essays were written heavily influenced by ChatGPT. And it's also like a bit obvious to the reader of the essays. I know being on this webinar, I know none of you would ever do that, but just I do read for some of our scholarship programs some of the essays. I like to stay sharp and do that from time to time, and that definitely is something that's come up this year. So just little just want to mention that.
So Will, is there any advice? There was a few comments in the chat of situations, unfortunately, where parents were sharing that this year their student got a scholarship and the college reduced the amount of aid that the student was receiving.
Yeah, so I guess every situation is going to be a little bit different. For some merit scholarships, the renewing the scholarship may be contingent on specific GPA or specific other requirements. There are, I guess, situations if it just changes and there's not a real explanation. I think the first thing to do is just to contact the financial aid office and sort of get all of the information that you can about why this may have happened, and just to get as specific as possible. Definitely like feel for folks who are in that situation. I know that does not feel good, but I would always recommend just at first trying to gather as much information. I saw Debbie, you mentioned like merit appeals, which was on that committee when I worked in admissions and financial aid. Definitely worth doing, but you'll be in a stronger position when you have all the information, you sort of understand the context. And I think remembering that for people in financial aid admissions, like they do, I believe that they do want to help folks. So I think just again, trying to wait, take a beat, collect as much information as possible, and then write, see if it's, you have that information, see how you can sort of proceed with an appeal, or, if there's like anything that they can do, to sort of, help. Obviously,
And,
like,
and maybe explain, there might be different types of the aid that can be,
yeah.
like removed. So that might be a start, in kind of negotiating.
Exactly. I think, every school is going to be a little bit different. I know I saw Debbie, there's you saw your comment about like schools like UVA and Michigan, like they're going to be pretty stingy with like appeals and such. I think private institutions, sort of the, not like tippy top of selectivity, there will be some more wiggle room. I also just think it's a weird year, with the FAFSA issues are also impacting the financial aid offices and the admissions offices. So unfortunately, some of this just will take, I imagine that is impacting things. And just, I talked to a lot of, admissions officers and financial aid officers at Scholarships 360 and know that, this has been a challenging year for those folks too. So yeah, I think it, sort of depends. I think, on the situation, on the college and the context, but I think for a lot of students there will be like some options and some places to a middle ground to be met.
Yeah, and just to echo that, I know as a parent, as a student, it's frustrating that there isn't like, we don't have a black and white answer. We can't say, if you do this, this will be the result. As well as mentioned, things vary by college. Even within a college, they might, vary depending on their situation. So I do, as Will is saying, I always recommend that families definitely contact the school, get as much information, and write an appeal. Again, cannot promise that that you'll get the outcome that you want, but I have seen lots of surprises. So it'd be better off that you tried and you got to know than you didn't try at all.
Definitely. It's, might be slightly uncomfortable, but that like can definitely pay off. And I guess I would also say like just thinking like other like options. I mean, like there, I don't know if everyone's like, thinking about like AP, IB exams, like some of the other sort of alternative like ways that colleges like may accept credit. Being, if your student is like a current student, like being an RA, that can be, I was an RA for my 3 years when I went to Wake Forest, and that paid for my housing, and I got a stipend, so that was like a big help for my family. So there are some like other like out of the box options as well. And I saw a question about, or a comment about, one of the last things I wanted to talk about, which is scholarship displacement. So for those who don't know, scholarship displacement is this idea that a college will give you a financial aid package, but they can't give you a financial aid package that exceeds the cost of attendance. So if the cost of attendance of the school's total cost of attendance is $80,000, everything included, and you get a full, let's just say hypothetically, you get a full freight scholarship for $80,000. Let's say you also then win a $10,000 scholarship from a local organization in your town. And this gets a little bit like wonky, but a lot of times the scholarship provider will directly send the check to the college. Unfortunately, there's really nowhere for that money to go because your entire cost of attendance is already covered. So that's what we call scholarship displacement, where an outside scholarship will not technically benefit you as a student. So I think a couple of thoughts on this, and it is a little, again, a little bit of a wonky thing. It will very much depend on everyone's situation and from college to college, just because every college has a different policy. Someone on my team, we do on our site have a directory of different policies for scholarship displacement. It was such a nightmare to put together just because every policy, there's just not really a clean way of organizing this information. But what you need to know about it is that in some situations, it may just not be worth it to apply to outside scholarships if your financial aid is that good. Otherwise, it really will depend on the college and your situation. So when I was at Kenyon, our scholarship displacement policy at the time, and I'm not 100% sure what it is now, it's a few years ago, was that we would replace what we call the self-help portion of your financial aid package with private scholarships first. So by self-help, we meant work study and federal student loans. So you got a $5,000 scholarship, that exceeded sort of the cost of tuition. We would use that to replace your federal student loans. You're still welcome to take those out if you'd like, but we would not be packaging you with that. And we'd also be replacing your work study for the federal work study program. Again, you were able to get a job on campus if you'd like. You could certainly work and such, but you would just not need to as far as making your financial aid package. So this policy will really vary from college to college. At some schools, like if a student is, what they call gapped in their financial aid, which means that their package does not like equal cost of attendance, then the outside scholarships will almost always help. Otherwise, I think that it's worth, again, talking to the person in financial aid. It's good to get to know the people in the financial aid office who might be assigned to you, and just to see what they can do. Again, there might be opportunities to, use some of those dollars for something else. It just really depends on what their policy is. Maybe there's opportunities to use that for, studying abroad. That might be, a more expensive study abroad program that you do down the line. So I definitely think it's worth talking to understand what all of your options are, as far as that. But students should know that in some situations, it might apply the outside scholarship just may not help. And if your financial aid's that good, it may not be worth, applying for scholarships that are private.
So quick question. So even if a student unfortunately is gapped and they get an outside scholarship, can the school still decide to displace money that they might have given the student, even though they haven't given them enough to, that gets close to or above the cost of attendance?
I don't want to speak to every single situation and every single college. That would be pretty strange, I think. I think that if you're getting outside scholarships, I think it's worth it to ask the college what their policy is. And then if you, for a scholar before, and then you could go to the scholarship provider and see, instead of they might be able to do something else for you, give it to you directly to pay. So again, it is kind of a weird space. I think that would be kind of unusual. I'm not familiar with that happening. Won't say it never happens or will never happen. But you do have some options. And I think understanding if you know what college you're going to or what colleges you're considering, understanding their scholarship displacement policy. It's not on their site, probably won't be on their site. You should call, email, and ask specifically how that works. I would use specifics in the email just to sort of give them some numbers. I think it just makes it easier to understand. And then as you also simultaneously understand the process that the scholarship provider is going to be awarding the check. The reason that a lot of providers will award them to the colleges is just that from a tax perspective, it is just cleaner for the scholarship provider to provide them directly to the college, which is sort of the steward to ensure that the scholarship is used for educational expenses that are approved by the IRS. There are some situations where scholarships would essentially be more like income that would be subject to tax. So in those situations, the scholarship provider would have to give you, I forget what the specific IRS form is, but they would have to give that to you to report that to the IRS's income.
So somebody's asking, is it more prudent to wait to apply to scholarships after they've gotten their financial aid package?
I don't think so, just because you don't know what the process, the timeline is going to be like. I would say, apply, and then, it's just really hard to predict like which ones you might win, what the timeline is for that scholarship. So I wouldn't try to game that out too much. Usually when you win a scholarship, they're going to be asking you, hey, like, where do we send the check to? So like, there will be some like time in between where you can sort of like get your ducks in a row if you're concerned at all about scholarship displacement.
Okay. Thank you. Lots of good information. Oh, sorry. How about another one? Can scholarships cover room and board or just tuition?
So institutional aid will cover like the on-campus room and board, but not that gets into like a little bit of a weird area where you're using it on like rent or something, like private rent. So as far as like other like living expenses, most of them are going like the IRS says it's for like approved like direct educational expenses. So that's how that would be treated. I know a lot of students will also ask about for like paying for a car, which that would not be the case, just even though like it's transportation might be part of that. I think just definitely have realized that there's a lot of some of it does not necessarily make a ton of sense and is not necessarily the most like student centric as far as like how a lot of this is defined, unfortunately. So we sort of have to play in the parameters that the IRS sets forth.
So before I wrap up, do we want to maybe see if there's any other questions we want to answer? I know, Will, and again, maybe you can talk from your experience. There were a lot of questions here about appealing merit scholarships. And since you were kind of in that position, I don't know if you can give people advice.
Yeah, I would say one, this is again, I know I sound like a broken record. It is a weird year. I typically May 1st is like the big deadline for college admissions folks. You get to pop the champagne or whatever. You finish the class, you get all the deposits in. Everything is great. Sometimes you go to the wait list, but you generally have a very good sense of what the class looks like. At some schools, this will be the case. At others, it's good. It's a bit of a question mark just because of this FAFSA issue and deposits are behind. So I just want to add that caveat. I definitely think that it depends on the college. I think the more selective the college is, the stingier they're going to be with merit scholarships. That it's just that is just going to be just the reality. I think that you can certainly appeal, but it's just going to be more difficult just because the more selective the college, usually they're over-indexing on need-based financial aid. For other colleges that do offer merit scholarships, my suggestion is in your appeal letter to include any new information. So if someone lost a job in the family, if there's new medical expenses, if there's something, some sort of, tragedy that happened.
Or some things improved. They've gotten a new award, or
exactly,
the
something's
GPA has
improved.
increased,
Yeah, you took some sort of test again. Maybe you have competitive merit scholarship offers from other colleges. I think with the competitive merit scholarships for other colleges, that is more impactful if it's from sort of like peer institutions. I would say that if it's from like colleges that are not super, like if it's a highly selective college and you've got a bunch of merit scholarships at less selected places, that's probably not going to carry as much weight, just being honest. But that is helpful context to know. Just college admissions is a very zero-sum game where you can only go to one college. So colleges are like inherently competing over students. I think that would be my, other part of it, just like any positive updates you want to share. But yeah, I mean, it's, that's up to the colleges to consider. I mean, a lot of it will just depend on the budget. I think appealing sooner rather than later is always a good thing, just because budget is finite. So yeah, I think that definitely worth doing. Be thoughtful in your letter. Definitely start with anything that has like changed, any like context that may not have been captured completely by FAFSA. Obviously, if something big has changed since you submitted your FAFSA, your CSS profile, definitely include that. And then all of the like wonderful things you've been doing your senior year, all of the updates. I tend not to think that like a ton of extra letters of recommendation or essays or like writing samples. I don't think that really like matters unless it's something that's like really, really, really extraordinary. So I would probably, pause on that. I know sometimes you get like, 5 or 6 extra recommendations from a student. That's just not necessary, not really going to move the needle. So.
There's been a few questions, and I think maybe, people just didn't catch it fast enough. Will, where you mentioned some other sites in addition to Scholarship 360 of where people could look for scholarships?
Yeah, Scholarship 360, Scholarship America, their scholarship search, they're a lot of what they do is provide like big foundations, big companies, big corporate nonprofit wings, scholarships. So Scholarship America, the College Board, Big Future, they do have a good scholarship search that's actually powered by the National Scholarship Providers Association. So that's another good one that I would recommend. And then looking at if your school uses like Naviance or Score or Maya Learning or one of these big college and career planning platforms. The kind of caveat with that is usually that's maintained by the school so that your mileage can kind of vary depending on how well maintained. Yeah, exactly. So those would be my recommendations.
Okay. Well, hopefully we answered most of your questions. I know that there will continue to be questions. Maybe we'll just go through. I'll share my contact information, and Allie and Will, if you want to. I've been telling people if you have any follow-up questions, you can send them to support@roadtocollege.com. Allie, where would be a good contact for people to email you?
Yeah, contact@ascentup.com, and I'll drop it into the chat as well.
And Will, I know you mentioned it, but please repeat it for everyone.
Yeah, you can I'll just put my email, will@scholarship360.org, really easy. Happy to help. I know can be a stressful process. And definitely I know we're all excited to, do this and provide more information. And I would also just say like, reach out, your school counselor, but also just the colleges you're considering, the admissions and financial aid folks, like they got into this to help students. And I know sometimes it feels like they're kind of like the, on the other side, the adversary or whatever. But I definitely think they can be advocates for you too. So I would, recommend trying to reach out to them and just, make sure that they know who you are. So.
Okay, and just as a quick summary for everything that we talked about tonight, as you can see, scholarships can offer some valuable financial support. We've talked about the range of scholarships. There's money that does come from the government. A huge chunk does come from colleges in terms of merit scholarships and even need-based aid, which a lot of people seem to have already gotten, and they've been talking about in the chat. And then, of course, all the other scholarship opportunities that we talked about tonight that might come from nonprofits or private organizations. And your student has to just get out there and start searching for these scholarships, figuring out what is unique about them and trying to find those scholarships that can leverage their uniqueness. And I hate to say this, but maybe, Allie and Will, you can decide whether or not you agree or not, but a little bit of this is a numbers game, meaning that, you're going to have to apply to a certain number of scholarships to possibly see return. You can't just apply to 1 or 2 and kind of say, I've done it. it might have to be more in the range of 10 to 15 to get some responses. So that's why it's important to start now. There was somebody who mentioned in the chat, their student was a high school junior. Were we only referring to starting the scholarship search, after you finish applications? No, you can start much earlier. And so if you're, a lot of the talk tonight had been about merit scholarships, appealing, and that feels like more about in that time frame of being a high school senior, but definitely searching and applying for scholarships can start much earlier, and in the opposite direction, and can continue when your student is in college. Anything else that you guys want to add? Oh, there was one question here. This is a great one. Is there a spreadsheet format that you can suggest to help track applying for these scholarships?
I would say scholarship name, maybe some basic requirements and the deadline. I think that's just a simple way of keeping everything organized and just like mapping out what you might need to prepare. So I think that you don't want to make it you don't want too much stuff to maintain. I think that's maybe like the link to like where the scholarship app is. I think that
they also include like deadlines of when you want other people to look at things, so that you're not only thinking about the date that it's due, but your own personal deadlines for all the different pieces, so that can also then get added to a calendar and something that you hold yourself accountable to.
Allie, if you can just show the QR code one more time. We had a few people who asked it earlier. I know you had it up before.
Pop it in. And I also put into the chat a whole guide that we have to paying for college that we created that talks a lot about scholarships, but then some of the stuff that we shared as well of like work-based study and but like on-campus jobs and different ways that you can supplement the expenses through a myriad of creative financial opportunities. So dropped it in the chat, and I can put it in again in case anyone didn't have a chance to grab it, but tons of really good resources in there.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Allie. Thank you, Will, for all of your great information tonight. Thank you for all of the parents, I'm guessing mostly, but maybe some students who also attended tonight. It was a lot of information. Hopefully, you were able to capture most of it. The recording will go out tomorrow, so you can feel free to watch it again or watch it with your students. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. I know we can all help in however ways that we can, or put you in touch with other people who can help. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Good night.